Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to talk about how SREs troubleshoot production issues. So this video is going to help you answer in the interview also, because interviewer wants to understand what do you do as the first thing when something critical is reported to you. So this video is going to help you with that. So you can see I already have a medium.com article where I've spoken about all the steps, all the things that the SREs may do to troubleshoot any issues. But I'm not going to read every line, but I just want to cover the most important parts from the article. So let's start. So the first thing is I just want to make you understand about the different channels or the different sources by which we can detect something critical in the infrastructure or in the application. So the first sources are Grafana alerts and the dashboards as well, where we are tracking all the things in our application and in our infrastructure. So we have set multiple dashboard panels. We have multiple alerts also, and whenever any threshold of the alert is triggered, I mean it's crossed, so it's going to trigger an alert to our Slack channel. So we have multiple Slack channels for multiple application teams, and that is where we can get all the notifications from the alerts whenever any threshold is crossed. So the first sources are Grafana alerts. As an example, this is how the Grafana screens may look like to you. Okay, so just as an example, I've pasted some screenshots. If I talk about some real world alerts that we can see, so this is how it's going to look like. So you will have a pod container count alert configured. If it drops below a certain threshold, so you would want to receive an alert for that. You would also have an alert for memory utilization of your pod. So for example, if it goes over 90%, you should be alerted in advance, because this can result in a high priority incident. Remember one more thing, getting these alerts do not mean that you will be receiving a high priority incident, but the chances are more, and you would want to proactively work on it and try to troubleshoot it. So this is going to be our first source from where we can get the reports of the critical issues. So in terms of some of the critical ones, as you can see, restart count of your pod is greater than 3 in the last 5 minutes. So one of the critical alerts. I'm talking about P95 latency also. If it is greater than 5 seconds, you have API latency greater than 1200 milliseconds of your 95th percentile. So these are some of the alerts that you can see on a real dashboard for a real production application. Okay, so these are the channels from where we can get the reports. So alerts are routed to Slack channels, as I mentioned. For critical alerts, we also have X matters. So if something goes really bad in the infrastructure, the alert has triggered, and it may trigger X matters on-call notification as well to the on-call person, especially from the SRE team, depending on the type of issue. You can also get emails as well, but that is not a preferred way of getting the notification for critical alerts. But yes, this is one of the options that you can use. Apart from our standard Grafana dashboards and alerts, dashboards where we can see all the metrics and alerts to get notified about those. Apart from that, we also have something called as synthetic monitors for which we are using DataDog. So in DataDog, you can configure synthetic monitors, and these are actually for your application accessibility in general. For example, your main default website page is available or not. So you can have a type of a monitor just for that, and if something goes wrong, this monitor can also trigger alert to your Slack channels. Okay, so this is like one of the ways by which we can see whether our application is working or not at a given point of time. If we receive the alert, we know that like something has really gone bad, so we can start working on it without actually getting official reports from our incident commander team. So incident commander team is there, who is going to report us of any HPIs. They're going to initiate the Zoom call, and they will follow their standard process just to get everyone on call and start troubleshooting the issue. So synthetic monitors are used for endpoint availability, login flows, or any critical API health. You can configure this. So this is going to answer, is the system actually usable from a user's perspective or not. Grafana alerts, source number one. Then source number two is synthetic monitors. Then source number 3 is our incident commander and the user report. So this is where we get the official complaints or the official HPIs reported. Okay, so this is where we get, and as I mentioned, incident commander team is the one who is going to raise the HPIs in Jira ticket. They're going to initiate the Zoom bridge, also called war room, so where we can where we will see all the stakeholders coming in, and then just seeing like who can start troubleshooting the issue, who can resolve the issue as soon as possible. So all those things happen on a Zoom call initiated by our incident commander team. So these three are the sources from where we can expect the reports of something not right in the infrastructure. Then I just want to talk about the architecture that I'm using. I've already spoken about this, so this is what we are using right now. So whatever steps I'm going to talk about, the real steps that an SRE can take, okay, related to all the troubleshooting steps, are relevant to this type of architecture that I'm using. Okay, I've already spoken about these architectures in my past videos. You can go check that. And this is the entire stack that we're using. So now I'll talk about some scenarios. So scenario number 1 is your application is down. It's a critical outage and application is not accessible by anyone. Objective is you want to restore the services ASAP while minimizing user impact, right? So what will I do first and what will I do number 2? So step-by-step investigation flow. So what SREs have done is, generally the application team is the first team that will be notified if this type of this type of issue occurs. Okay, so the application team or the team of developers who have developed the application, who owns the application, will be the first team that will be notified. Okay, and the SRE team has enabled a few checks that the application team can do themselves without involving the SRE team. So if I talk about those as well, so as I mentioned, the DataDog synthetic alerts have been configured, so the application team can also get the notifications on the Slack channels. The Slack channels are accessible by both SRE and the developer teams. Okay, then as I mentioned, they're going to check whether the Slack alert was fired or not. They can identify the region impacted, the blast radius, full outage versus partial. So these things can be identified by the application team themselves. Okay, so these synthetic alerts are going to ensure that they are able to identify the right region, the blast radius, and whether it's a full outage or a partial outage. Then the application team can also check their recent deployments done. So any latest production release that have been done, maybe in the last few minutes, like some changes have been deployed to production that could have caused this issue. So they can check it. If they think that it's related to that, they can quickly roll back to restore the issue, and they can validate the recovery also. Most of the time you will see 80% of outages are change related only. Okay, so this is where we will be able to resolve most of our issues. Okay, then as I mentioned, we have already configured a lot of Grafana dashboards for them, so they also have access to it. They can check the dashboard for latency spikes, for any error rates related to 4xx error or 5xx errors if they are seeing on any of the dashboard, anything related to throughput drops. So all these dashboards are configured correctly for their applications, and they have access, they can check it themselves. Then step 4, they can also validate a few things on the application level. For example, they can check the communication flow from front-end to back-end APIs, from back-end to database, or any external dependencies that their application may have. All that is going to be validated by the application team themselves. Okay, and they also have some dashboards related to status of the pods itself, like if a pod is going into CrashLoopBackOff or pending status, they can check it. They can check how many times the pod has been restarted in the last few minutes. They have access to a liveness and readiness pro failure dashboard as well. They have access to CPU memory saturation alerts. They can check any HPA and VPA misconfigurations. So all these different dashboards have been enabled by the SRE team for the application team. So this is how the entire thing happens. Okay, so the application team is the one that is involved the first. They perform all these checks from their end. Okay, and they also have access to logs on their own also. If they want to check, they have access to the ArgoCD pod logs from the UI, SRE also has the access, but we have already like told them that you can do these checks from your end. So they also have access to ArgoCD Pod logs from UI. So how it's going to look like, if I just show you. So I have ArgoCD running right now, and I can show you how it's going to look like. So this is how a real world ArgoCD UI looks like for a particular application. You can see there's one application running, and this access to logs is available to both the application teams and the SRE. So they can go to these three dots on the pod, and they can go to logs, and they can check a few logs for the particular application. As you can see right now, the pod is in a healthy status. The pod is running, but within the pod there is some failure. Okay, you can see there are some HTTPD based failures because this is an Apache web server application running as a pod in an EKS cluster. This was deployed via CICD pipeline. So you can see that the pod is healthy, but even then the container inside the pod is not healthy, and it is I'm showing some logs. Okay, here also you can see some events. Okay, so these are the so this is an error that is still there in the inside the pod. Okay, so this is where they can check the logs themselves also, or this can be checked by SREs also. But here I'm just talking about the application teams check. Then I'll come to SRE part also. Okay, so if I go again, so this is where they can check the logs. They also have access to Grafana Loki. So once again, I'm talking about the infrastructure that I'm using. We are using Grafana Loki for log aggregation, where we can run LogQL queries for all the application logs. So you have two places where you can check the logs. You can check the logs in the ArgoCD Pod logs. You can check the logs in Grafana Loki also. Let me show you that part as well. So we go here. So for example, this is your Grafana dashboard, and you can see the data source. It is set to Loki data source, and this is your cluster. So you know that the issue is happening in US East 1 EKS cluster. Environment is prod. The name of the service is nginx-json. As an example, I'm showing you, and you want to filter out all the logs with error message. So you just like use this LogQL query from here. I'm using this line filter to filter out only error based logs, and I just hit refresh here, and you can see multiple errors here. Okay, so this is how we are able to filter out the logs as well from our LogQL based queries run in the Grafana dashboard using LogQL data source. This is one more place where we can check the logs of the application. Okay, then application log inside the pod or with LogQL queries in Loki. This I already covered. So we can look for exceptions or we can look for timeouts if it's related to a database connection failures or any errors. As I just mentioned, error we can filter it out. So we can see all the errors in our on our Grafana Loki based logs as well. Now after these step 6, if they think that they are not able to resolve the issue, then they can escalate to SRE themselves. So when the application team hits a limit, SRE investigation is going to start. Okay, now why do they need SRE? So even though SREs have enabled a lot of initial checks that they can do on the infrastructure and on the application level, but this is where our SREs work begins. Okay, so they checked everything. They weren't able to find any issue, resolve the issue in hand. Now they're going to escalate to SRE. Okay, so see, in some cases this escalation happens automatically via Xmatter critical alert, but in some cases where the Xmatter based notification is not configured for a few alerts which may be relating to some high priority incident, in those cases the application team can make a call by checking the on-call roster also. So they have access to the on-call roster in Xmatters. They can check it, and then they can make another call to the on-call person. So that's why the request, that's how the request comes to SRE also. SREs can check everything in deep. For example, they can check anything related to networking, anything related to config maps, secrets, any recent changes done on the ingress level or on the API gateway level. These things can be checked by the SREs. And if I talk about some advanced checks by the SREs, which application team will not be aware of, then I'm talking about some node level issues related to out of memory or disk pressure, AWS throttling, that means related to ECR, ELB, or any IAM limits. So these things can be checked by SREs because application team will not be aware of these concepts. Then any network policies that might be blocking the traffic. Maybe some recent security changes have been done on the network policies inside the cluster that may have like blocked some traffic, due to which this high priority incident would have resulted. Then anything related to TLS or certificates expiring. Okay, then any dependency outages, for example, we have some third party APIs, so these things can be checked by the SREs. Okay, so this is where our role begins. Okay, this is where our role begins. This is where we start troubleshooting the issue. Once again, how do we do it? It's the same way that application does, but we do it in deep. Okay, so for example, in this case, I'll start again with seeing whether the pod is healthy on the ArgoCD. Okay, so first thing I can just check the status of pod on ArgoCD UI. Okay, this is where I'll see, okay, the pod is healthy. I can look at the logs again. Okay, here I can look at the logs, whether the application process that is running inside the container inside the pod is healthy or not. So this is where I can start. I can get started. Apart from that, once again, I can also check the Grafana dashboards. Okay, I can also check the logs using Grafana Loki. Here I can check the logs. Okay, I can also take a look at the alerts. So if I talk about the alerts, for example, this is one alert related to pod restart. So you can see it's in firing status. So this is how you're going to see on Grafana that some alert is triggered, though the application team can also check. But I'm just saying that we can also use the same platform, but we're going to dig deep as compared to the application teams. Application teams have been able to use all these, but they may not be knowing everything about the logs also. So that is where they're going to involve us, and we're going to take a deeper look at it, and then see whether we can resolve the issue or not. Okay, so this is one screen where you will find the Grafana alerts. Okay, so this is how it's going to look like. Also, apart from checking the logs from ArgoCD UI and Grafana Loki screens, we also have access to kubectl CLI. Okay, so we also have access to kubectl, so we can check the logs like this also. Okay, so for example, kubectl logs. So this is another way by which we check the logs. Okay, so there are like multiple ways to check multiple things depending on the type of issue. Okay, so we have access to kubectl CLI, we have access to ArgoCD UI, we have access to Grafana Loki based logs using LogQL queries. We do have access to Grafana alerts. We do have access to Grafana dashboards. We also have access to a UI tool which we can use to check the logs again. We are using Lens tool. The Kubernetes Lens tool is there. Let me show you that. So there's a tool called Kubernetes Lens. So it's a GUI based tool where you can interact with the cluster the same way you do with kubectl. You can interact via user interface using Lens tool. So we use that also. Okay, but in most cases we don't need to, because like everything is available to us using the ArgoCD and other things. So we are able to check all the logs related to the application and the infrastructure there itself. But we do have multiple options to do the same thing. Now I'll talk about scenario number 2, which is CICD pipeline failure. So this is related to some production based CICD pipeline that is being used by any of the developer teams, and the pipeline is failing. Okay, and it is impacting some of their production releases. There's some deadline which is there, so it is not resulting in any HPI, but it's very critical because it is impacting some deadlines related to some production releases. Okay, so this is what happens. So here I'll just talk about what we do. So as I mentioned, we're using GitLab as a CI platform. So that is where we find the failures as well. Okay, so for example, I'll go to my GitLab pipeline and I'll show you this. Okay, so I'll go here. Here, so I have this pipeline already. Let me look for any failures. So I'll go to build pipelines and I'll look for a pipeline that would have failed. Okay, so here they have success. It's all been successful here. So this is the pipeline ID in GitLab. So I'm using GitLab CI, and just imagine that this is one of the main production releases related to So it's related to production release, and this pipeline has failed. This is the pipeline ID, and you have been given the task to check the issue. Okay, and this is where the pipeline is failing. So the first thing that we do is always we can check the logs in GitLab itself. So the stage which is failing, it's going to show you the logs, and that's our first source of truth where we can check for the details related to a particular failure. So as you can see here, right now the error related to cannot perform an interactive login from a non-TTY device. So this is the main issue. It will really depend on what kind of application you are like managing, and what kind of issue will be there. So it will be related to the application itself. So here I'm just giving an example that this is how you can identify the issue initially. Okay, so this is related to one of the production pipelines which is failing, and this is where you can check the error. Okay, so this is okay if the pipeline has failed in the middle of the pipeline stage. For example, if you see this pipeline, it has multiple stages. Okay, it failed in the third stage, and it did not fail in the last step here, deploy dev. Okay, so this is where you're going to check the logs, and then you're going to verify like what all is related to. For example, so this error that is coming, if you see the error, I mean the things which are happening just before this. Okay, so it's related to AWS version. It is trying to print the AWS version, then Docker version. So I should be knowing like from where this is coming from in the repo, in the application repo. So right now I know that these are coming from the .gitlab-ci.yml file. So if I go to my repo, if I open the .gitlab-ci.yml file, I can see all these details coming from here. So build and stage, this build and package stage. So build and package stage, you can see I'm using this command. So this is where it's failing. Okay, this is where it is failing, somewhere here. So this is where I can see, okay, like whether this is correctly configured or I have to make some change. Of course, I need to do some research around this. Okay, right now in my company we are using ChatGPT tools. We have full access to the paid version of ChatGPT and Copilot. So that's what we use to like quickly find out the issue. But you can also look for some blogs and articles related to your issue on Stack Overflow, or there are some other blogs available. So it will depend on the type of issue, but this is where we can check. Okay, so anything that is failing. Okay, so if your pipeline is failing like this, okay, I'll just go back to the pipeline again, just to make it clear like what exactly happens and how the SREs are able to troubleshoot the issue. So this pipeline is failing at the third stage, build and package stage. So the application hasn't been deployed to ArgoCD yet. Okay, I'm talking about CICD pipeline here. So the pipeline has failed on the CI stages only. It has not reached the CD stage. Okay, so you know that the issue is happening to some configuration in the application repo itself. So you should know from where that error will be coming from. So you need to investigate around all the things that are there in your repo. Okay, it can be related to some Argo app, not Argo app in this case, but related to your Helm charts if you're using. So I'm using Helm charts here. You can see I have deployment.yml and service.yml file. Okay, so you need to see like what all changes have been made recently to the application repo. That could be the issue here. Okay, so it will depend again on the type of issue, and you have to check like what all changes have been made to the application repo recently. Okay, so most of the time the issue is related to some recent changes only, and that's what you have to identify and tell to the application developer that this issue is happening due to this. So you need to make changes to this section of the application repo. This is one scenario. Now, if this issue happens on the last stage of the pipeline, okay, I'll go back to the pipelines. Let me see if I have any error like that. Just a moment here. So for example, I check this pipeline. So I know that all the stages have passed, and it is failing on the last stage where it is trying to deploy my my Helm chart to the EKS cluster via ArgoCD. Okay, this is where it's happening. So what usually happens? So if you see here, so this is the last stage. Okay, and it is failing with this error. This one. This is the error. Okay, so you know that the application has been deployed to ArgoCD. Okay, this is the output that is showing that the application was deployed to ArgoCD. Okay, but it is still failing. So you know that the application is available in ArgoCD right now, and you will always get a URL like this. Okay, So this may not be functional at the moment, but this URL is the URL of your application that has been deployed in ArgoCD. So this is where you can check. So if it happens on the last stage, you can just click on the URL. You can go to your ArgoCD. Again, you can check the ArgoCD configuration of your application. You can check the logs. You can check the configuration related to the config maps or deployment, ingress. All this you can check in ArgoCD itself. Okay, so right now this is not functional because this is for my past deployments. Okay, I think it's been few months, but if you go here in ArgoCD, once again, let me show you how it's going to look like. So this is where you can check other things also. Okay, apart from that, if you go to details, you can go to events. So this is where you can check all the events, though there are no events right now available, but you can check events for your pod also. Okay, this I already showed you. Okay, but you can check other things also. This is a so there's only one event happened. You can also go to details just to check the live configuration of your pod that has been used in ArgoCD. Okay, this is where you can check the live manifest also. You can identify whether there is anything that you need to change here. So this is how we check the pipeline issues. Okay, so if the pipeline is failing before the last stage, then you can check in the GitLab itself, and then you can identify like what section of the repo will be faulty, and you can identify, and then you can recommend to the developer. If it's failing at the last stage, you know that the application is there in ArgoCD, so you can check a few things in ArgoCD also. And if it does not help, then again you have to go to your Loki logs in Grafana, or you can check some dashboards as well. Okay, so it depends on the issue itself, but that's how we do. That's how we are trying to troubleshoot the issue step by step. Depending on the type of issue, it will depend on that. Okay, largely on that. All right, so I hope it was useful to you. Okay, so if you have any questions, anything you still want to ask, please reach out to me in the comment section. Okay, but so if I go back here, so that's what I mentioned here, that you can check the GitLab pipeline logs. Some of the like common failures you will see, like YAML syntax issues, Helm values misconfiguration, or anything related to build errors related to your application. Okay, so you can check values.yml file. If I'm using any Java Spring Boot applications, you will find pom.xml file. If you're using any module to do something related to Terraform, then you can check the Terraform modules. Okay, and you can check the recently changed application files. Okay, in the repo. So as I mentioned, most of the failures will be related to your recent commits only. Okay, and then as I mentioned, ArgoCD deployment, you can check any of the sync failures, health status of your pod, whether it is healthy or not, any resource errors. And then again, you can go to Grafana dashboards and you can check all the other things. Okay, so this is what we do whenever we get any issues. I just gave you exact steps of how a real world production issue can be troubleshooted. Step by step, I've tried to cover. But anyways, if you still have anything to ask, you can just reach out to me in the comment section. Alright guys, I hope this video was useful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. Please share this with others, and please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's all for this one, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye for now.